Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, let's just jump right into it. We're going to tackle one of the biggest questions out there. What's the ultimate foundation of knowledge? I mean, really, what lets us say we truly know anything at all?
So instead of diving straight into, heavy philosophy, let's start with history. Specifically with some really strange events. These are facts that just don't seem to fit our neat and tidy explanations. You can almost think of them as glitches in the matrix of how we understand the world.
Okay, for example, just look at the Jewish people. Now, if you look at this table, standard sociological laws, they tell us a pretty clear story. A people scattered across the globe, a diaspora, they should just assimilate, right? They should lose their culture over time. And persecution, well, that should lead to them being wiped out. And a language that hasn't been spoken for millennia, it should be dead, gone. But look at what actually happened. The total opposite. Their cohesion got stronger, their identity was catalyzed, and that dead language, it was revived. All of this leading to a re-established nation. It's like it breaks the normal laws of social gravity. It just shouldn't happen.
Or how about the rise of Christianity? I mean, think about it. It started from this tiny, tiny core of factors. We're talking about a marginal movement in a forgotten corner of the Roman Empire. You'd expect what? A massive political or military machine to change the world? Nope. This had maybe 4% of the ingredients you'd think you'd need. And yet, from that tiny 4% came a whopping 64% of the world-changing effects that literally shaped Western civilization. Now, you've probably heard of the Pareto principle, right? The 80-20 rule, where 20% of the effort gets 80% of the results. Well, this is like Pareto squared. It's an absolutely extreme case of a tiny, tiny cause producing this massive, massive effect. So the question is, how on earth do our standard models even begin to account for that?
Right, so when our best explanations fail this badly, this spectacularly, we're left with a pretty serious intellectual problem. And the sources we're digging into today, they have a name for this. They call it epistemic debt.
So what is that? Well, it's basically the massive gap between what we actually see happening in the world and what our systems of explanation, things like sociology, geopolitics, even physics, can possibly account for. The analogy here is perfect. It's like trying to buy a mansion with just the loose change in your pocket. The currency of our explanations, it just doesn't cover the bill, not even close.
And this epistemic debt, it forces a choice. It puts us at a real fork in the road. Down one path, you can just dismiss these huge historical anomalies. You can say, they're just impossible flukes, statistical noise, let's just ignore them. But the other path, that's where you start to question the model itself. You start to wonder if maybe, just maybe, you need a deeper kind of answer altogether.
All right, so let's go down that second path. What is wrong with our models? Well, the problem, as our sources argue, goes way deeper than just these historical examples. It's about the very foundation of how we justify any knowledge at all.
Philosophers have been wrestling with this for centuries, and they've kind of found that whenever you try to pin down why something is true, you hit one of four dead ends. First, there's infinite regress. That's just an endless chain of asking why. Then you've got circularity, where A proves B and B proves A. Super helpful. Third is pragmatism, which is basically just shrugging and saying, hey, it works. But that's not really a foundation, is it? And finally, there's foundationalism, where you just stop at a basic belief without explaining why it has any authority. All of them, as you can see, are failed escape routes. And here's the kicker, the core diagnosis. Every single one of those escape routes fails for the exact same reason. They're trying to solve a problem of being, an ontological problem, with the tools of knowing, epistemic tools. It's like trying to build a house with a dictionary. They're stuck in the world of ideas and arguments, when what they really need is a solid foundation in reality itself.
Okay, so if all those classic philosophical paths are just dead ends, then what would a real foundation for knowledge even look like? What are the requirements? Let's actually try to build a profile of it based on everything we've just seen that doesn't work.
Well, for starters, it can't just be some abstract principle, like a law of logic or a math formula. And here's why, and this is a really key idea. You can deviate from a principle, sure, but you can only betray a person. A structure, it can describe how things work, but it can't hold you responsible for anything. For there to be real obligation, there has to be a personal ground, someone who can actually be betrayed. So when you look at all the ways other models have failed, this really specific profile starts to emerge. A true foundation for knowledge would have to be, first, not derived. It has to exist from itself, be its own cause. Second, not abstract. It has to be concrete. able to actually mean something and act. Third, not contingent. It absolutely must exist. It can't be an if. Fourth, not fragmented. It has to be a single unified source for everything. And finally, and this is maybe the most crucial part, it has to be actively addressing. It needs to be personal, capable of speaking to you.
Okay, that is one demanding job description. So, what if I told you there's a claimant in history that actually perfectly matches this incredibly demanding profile?
Because according to the sources we're looking at, in all of recorded human history, there's only one voice that claims to be its own ground. A voice whose very name is a statement of self-sufficient, necessary existence. And think about this. This isn't a prophet interpreting a message, or a philosopher figuring something out. It's a first-person claim.
And that right there is the key distinction. This isn't some philosophical principle we're supposed to reason our way to. It's presented as a personal self-identification, a direct message from the foundation itself. It's an address, not an abstract concept.
And this brings us full circle, right back to our initial mystery. Remember those glitches in history? Israel's impossible survival, Christianity's explosive growth. Suddenly, they get completely reframed. They aren't bugs in the system anymore. The argument here is that they are the signature of the address. They're the evidence that this personal foundation is actually acting within our history, within time and space.
So where does this leave us? What's the big takeaway from all this? I mean, what does it mean for you? Right here, right now, just trying to make sense of the world.
Well, we followed the argument all the way through, right? We went from those historical anomalies to the philosophical dead ends to what a real foundation would require, and finally to a claimant who fits the bill. The logical steps of the investigation are complete.
But here's the thing. This whole journey, it doesn't just end in a neat little conclusion. It's not like solving a math problem where you get the answer, you write it down, and you move on. It's not about just filing away a new piece of information.
No, instead, the entire point of this argument is to put you, the observer, in a totally new position. You're not just looking at a bunch of facts from a safe distance anymore. You've been moved. You are now standing somewhere new, in a new relationship to the truth itself. And that's the final and maybe most provocative thought. The whole thing is shifted from being an abstract analysis to a deeply personal situation. The claim on the table is that you are being spoken to by the very foundation of reality. So if that's true, the only question left isn't about whether the argument is sound anymore. The question is, what's your answer going to be?